Welcome back to the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. I'm in conversation with Jennifer Loewenstein. She's a faculty associate in Middle Eastern Studies at Penn State University, and Joseph Daher. He's a PhD student at the University of Lausanne in Switzerland. Thank you both for joining me again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Jennifer, let me begin with you and give you an opportunity to respond how we ended the last segment with Putin's assertion that Russia is there on the invitation of Assad.
Well, I think my first reaction is to want to go back to history, recent history, and remind listeners that in 2011, there were peaceful protests in the city of Daraa in southern Syria by people who were demanding reforms within the Syrian government, and that these peaceful protests were met with violent and brutal military responses by the Assad regime. It was because of the consistent use of this violence that the people on the other side, on the reform or revolutionary side, began to take up arms. Once that happened, parties from the outside were invited in, and different players started to arm different groups within Syria until you had a multitude of different groups, Islamist primarily, on a spectrum of how extreme they are. One could debate. You had the moderate forces asking for democracy, for a just government, and then, of course, you had the Syrian regime. What I think is important, though, is that once arms and financial and military support started entering Syria, the conflict went beyond a local civil war that was sectarian, something that I need to remind the viewers that the United States had been stoking sectarian tensions in Syria for quite some time in an effort to destabilize and eventually change the regime in Damascus. Now, this hasn't changed. The U.S. goal hasn't changed. It's just that it has broadened. The U.S. wants Assad out. It is also quite aware of what ISIS is, how brutal it is, and it wants to defeat ISIS.
All right. Let me go to you, Joseph, here. Now, what do you make of what Jennifer is saying?
I tend to disagree with the comment saying that the U.S. wanted a regime change in Damascus. No, on the opposite. I remind everyone that Hillary Clinton, in the beginning of the popular uprising in Syria, characterized Assad as a reformist. And most of the deputies in the US parliament agreed on this. What happened after is that US policies regarding not only Syria, but the whole region has been constant. What they want is a kind of a Yemeni solution. That meaning that you maybe cut the head of the regime, meaning in the case of Syria, Assad, but you maintain the regime as it is. Talking about security services.
And one of the reasons I disagree is because one of the many documents that was leaked to the press by WikiLeaks was a document issued by the State Department and the CIA collectively, in which details about the United States' efforts to destabilize the Syrian regime came out. Details such as State Department officials literally talking back and forth about how it's important to stoke sectarian tensions, to undermine the regime, and that Islamist groups that had fled into Syria, in part as a result of the surge in Iraq, where the United States utterly destroyed the state and caused problems that are still almost irreparable, if not irreparable. I don't think that the United States has ever wanted Syria to stay in place unless it does so with a dictator that is sympathetic to U.S. interests. And
And
that's a different
Joseph,
story.
do you
No,
agree?
but I'm sorry. When was Assad threatening really the interest of the U.S.? I just remind that since '73, not a single bullet has been shot against Israel by the Assad regime. The Assad regime has entered Lebanon in '76 to crush the Lebanese left, Lebanese national movement, and the Palestinian movement. Assad regime has participated in '91 in the Second Gulf War, alongside the US. And in 2003, Assad regime, following 2001, Assad regime has participated in the war, so-called war on terror by Bush. The close relationship was with the US. So, no, I disagree completely. And talking about sectarianism in Syria, the first actor that was responsible for the rise of sectarianism in Syria was the Assad regime itself, by nurturing sectarianism for the past 30 years, and by a particular repression, I must remind. And talking about Islamic fundamentalist forces, most of the heads of Islamic military forces today in Syria were all in Syrian prisons at the beginning of the uprising, and they benefited from amnesty, whereas democratic activists were completely crushed, repressed, or put in exile. I just remind, for the past, since 2014, in the year 2014 and 2015, the Assad regime offensive has, on different forces, Daesh is only 10%, 6 to 10% of the Assad regime offensive against various forces in Syria, only 6 to 10% is against Daesh, Islamic State.
Right.
Raqqa
But
has
then
been bombed.
why, if you're saying this, why does the United States want the Assad government defeated? It has been consistently against Bashar al-Assad and his government since before the Syrian civil war began. There's no question of that. After Rafiq Hariri was assassinated, there was an effort. The United Nations, under the leadership of the United States, forced Syria out of Lebanon. This was
which is, I'm sorry,
Joseph, Joseph, let me make an intervention here. Do you agree with Jennifer that the U.S. had destabilization plans in Syria to destabilize Assad's leadership?
Even the U.S. newspapers, and wherever you go, has shown that the different military programs to help the democratic forces of the FSA is a complete failure. Only two groups has been trained for the past 4 years. One group of 50% and one group of 70%.
No, see, I disagree with this, because
the plan that was funded by the U.S. budget.
Why would there be secret documents that are coming?
Jennifer, just hold on. Let him finish his point. I'll give you an opportunity.
The U.S. Parliament to fund so-called 5,000 to 10,000 soldiers. If you check out the text, in the text, it's not to fight the Assad regime. It's only to fight the Islamic State and to reach a kind of a negotiated solution. Never the U.S. has looked to overthrow this regime. And this has been consistent with also the policies of Israel regarding Syria. Just see the coordination today between Russia and Israel regarding the strikes within Syria. All imperialist powers, whether US or Russia or regional powers such as Saudi Arabia or Iran, are enemies of the popular revolution in Syria and never wanted it.
Okay, let's
be very clear on this.
Okay, let's allow Jennifer to get in and give her point of view. Go ahead, Jennifer, your reaction to him.
Yeah, what I was going to say is I don't think that the Russians, the Americans, and certainly not the Assad regime itself, none of them is interested in real democratic reform. It's not in the interest of any of those parties to have democracy, liberty, justice, these ideals have any real manifestations in Syria. Unfortunately, that's a very cynical interpretation, but I think it's also a realistic one. We have, however, got documents that reveal quite serious U.S. attempts to destabilize and overthrow the Syrian government, going back not only to 2006, after the Hariri assassination, but well before that, because these powers wanted to forge some kind of alliance with Syria in the same way that it had an alliance with Egypt and Iraq by having a dictator in power who would do their bidding.
Joseph, one of the very important points I think that we need to understand here in this context is, what are the forces in Syria that you represent, and also that you think better represent the democratic interest of the Syrian people?
You did it, just as to remind, you had a fantastic popular uprising in Syria that was organized on a horizontal basis, on a very democratic basis, which was based on coordination committees in neighborhoods, villages, cities, regions, etc. This was crushed by the Assad regime.
I happen to agree. These were excellent organizations that did an amazing amount of good work.
Okay.
And go ahead.
These forces, even though have been repressed first by the Assad regime, most importantly, and secondly by various Islamic fundamentalist forces that are also part of the counter-revolution, just as the Assad regime, are still existing despite everything. You have pockets of hope, for example, in some neighborhoods of Aleppo, despite constant barrel bombs for the past 2 years against these neighborhoods, such as Bustan Qasr, Sheikh Mahsoud, different areas. You had also, we should remind that even though we speak about a loyalist region, which I completely disagree, maybe a region where you did not witness demonstration at the same scales as others, but for example, in the city of Sueda, majority composed of Druze population, you had huge demonstrations for the past few weeks with a statue of Hafiz al-Assad completely teared down. In this summer, you had also demonstrations in Latakia to complain about an assassination of an army colonel by one of the nephew of the Assad family. The regime is completely, on many bases, not seen as an alternative for the future of Syria. It's a danger for the future of Syria and for the social composition of the Syrian society. So I support all the democratic activists that are still on the ground or in exile that have a democratic speech against sectarianism, for equality. And these are the people that we have to support, despite so many defeats, despite the advances of two reactionary actors represented by the Assad regime and its allied, and various Islamic fundamentalist forces that also attack these Democrats. But they resist. In many areas, you had resistance, demonstrations, still self-organization of the people on the ground. And these are the people that I don't claim to represent, but I claim that we are bound together to build a new democratic, social justice, and secular Syria that will really be an example for the future, not only of this region, for the whole world, despite this dictatorship that is a killing machine, not only for the past 4 years, but for the past 4 decades.
Right. Jennifer and Joseph, I'm going to ask you one final question, and that is these democratic forces that are currently trying to organize within Syria that Joseph is talking about. In terms of support for this, and the reality of it coming to any fruition, who do you think should support them, and what are the potential solutions for the Syrian question at this moment? Let me start with you, Jennifer.
Well, first of all, I think that the people that Joseph is talking about, the real revolutionaries who have a vision of a democratic republic of Syria, that these people are the idealists and the most humane people in Syria with a kind of vision that we can only hope to aspire to. I don't understand why anyone would reject that on a personal, individual level. At the same time, it is the chances of Syria following that group of people right now, the chances of some kind of resolution in Syria that would take up that banner are next to zero. We have two forces opposing each other, the Assad regime and ISIS, and the middle, the tiny center of idealistic radical hope, which I agree is the most humane part of the entire country. I think that it is being squeezed out, and that this is probably the biggest tragedy of the entire civil war. Neither the Assad regime nor ISIS cares about the human beings in Syria who are being displaced, who are leaving the country, who are being murdered, imprisoned, tortured. Neither side cares. The United States and Russia are cynically involved in this process by dividing the country into these two factions and practically forgetting the middle ground. The U.S. has been unbelievably incapable of working with the moderate forces, the so-called moderate forces.
Joseph, let me allow you to get...
They're working with are moderate. I'm not sure. They're armed people, and I don't think the armed conflict is a way of resolving the Syrian conflict itself. I think we have a long, long way to go before this war is over, and probably the most intelligent or the most practical way of moving forward at all right now, given the present circumstances, would be for the United States and the Soviet Union, it's Russia, shows you my age, for the United States and Russia to sit down, to coerce, demand that the parties involved in this bloodthirsty war sit down and start to negotiate some kind of ceasefire, some kind of settlement in which Assad can be at least transitioned out of power, in which a state of some sort remains so that we don't have another Iraq, and in which the people that Joseph emulates correctly, in my view, actually will have a chance. Otherwise, I don't think they have a chance in the world.
Okay, that is the plan that Putin's putting forward. Joseph, your reaction to what Jennifer is saying, but also the revolutionary democratic forces within Syria that you argue needs to emerge and be supported. Who do you think should be supporting them?
Any kind of support without any kind of political condition will be welcome. But even though I don't really like the term idealist, I know that will never happen, because anyone that wants any kind of radical change is not really supported by any kind of state that exists today, neither in the past. So it's just that to show also the contradictions of some countries that are playing the game of presenting themselves as so-called friend of Syria, which they are not, obviously. They are enemies of the Syrian people. As I said, no one is a friend of the Syrian people in their the struggle for democracy and social justice and equality. But just to come back to some things, the origin of the problem in Syria is the Assad regime. Daesh, ISIS only appeared, just to remind everyone, in 2013 autumn. 90% of the civilians killed in Syria since the beginning of the uprising is the Assad regime. So this means, and any kind of solution to put an end to ISIS is not only military, it's also political. Because ISIS, if we wanted or not, used some certain popular frustration, especially in Iraq, that was due to US imperialism, but also the Iranian state and the Iraqi government state that was allied to the Iranian that implemented sectarian policies against the Sunnis. And again, to put an end to ISIS is also to put an end to the dictatorship of the Middle East. This means a radical change. Otherwise, you can have a new ISIS that will come maybe in 2 or 5 years. This will happen actually with Al-Qaeda that nearly disappeared in 2008, 2010 in Iraq and reappeared on a worst appearance with the Islamic State. So any kind of solution, Assad is not possible to have, realistically speaking, and not as an idealist. If you want a real solution in Syria, which I wish, I'm not asking to have a non-ending war in Syria until the last Syrian, but any kind of real solution must take into account the will of the Syrian people. In their far majority, they don't want the Assad regime. They don't want Assad play any role in the transition, and not anyone that has blood on their hands. This means security services, etc.
And Joseph, what does that table?
This is a realistic transition.
What does that table look like? What does that table look like from your point of view? If you were to bring together a political solution to the problem of Syria, who would be sitting around the table from your point of view?
You want me to speak as analysis? It's very clear who will sit around the table. You will have the US and Western countries with Gulf monarchies on one side, and Russia and Iran on the other side. And as I said before, the differences between them are not very large. I just remind that during the Geneva negotiation, the various ones, they agreed on a kind of transition. The only debate they had was around the role of Assad. Otherwise, they agreed on everything, maintaining the security services, maintaining the army as it is, etc., which is very dangerous. This means you maintain the Assad regime. Today, even the Western states are agreeing for a role for Assad in the transition, which is catastrophic. This means you will have a continuation of the war, because Assad is the main actor. And not only stability, I mean, for the Middle East, but stability for Europe, because 90% of the refugees that came to Europe is because of the Assad war on its people. So realistically, this is a realistic solution. Any kind of transition must be Assad kicked out, judged for his war crimes, and all his team with him. And I'm in favor also of judging and condemning also the war crimes of the various Islamic fundamentalist forces as well in Syria. But this is a realistic transition.
Jennifer, last word to you. Who's sitting around the table on a political solution to the Syria question?
In the Syrian civil war by proxy. And I think, unfortunately, the number of countries involved now in the Syrian civil war that have their hands or fingers in the pot, as it would be described, this is one of the problems that has exacerbated the crisis in Syria so desperately. These forces have to withdraw. There have to be arms embargoes in place, even though there are many arms now within Syria. There have to be policies put into place that can be held into place by the United Nations, by the Russians, and by the United States, because it's in both of their interest to stop this kind of tumult, this horrible, this catastrophe that is taking place in Syria.
Jennifer, hold on for a second.
Russia doesn't want its
voice.
own borders to blow up into.
We have to start that question again, Jennifer. I'm sorry, I wasn't cutting you off. It's just that we were losing your audio. So I'll give you an opportunity to respond, but I have to ask you the question again. Here we go.
Okay.
So Jennifer, who do you think should be around the table in a political solution to the Syrian question?
I think that all of the countries that have been involved in Syria, that have made Syria a proxy, that have become proxies within the Syrian conflict, all of these countries need to sit down and talk about realistic ways of stopping the civil war, which is intrinsic to Syria, whether they're there or not, and getting themselves out. Again, that may be idealistic, but there's the only way forward without continuing a bloodbath, the bloodbath that has engulfed Syria and its people, is for these proxy parties to get out, to restrain themselves, to refuse to allow their foreign fighters into the country, to do everything possible to prevent outside intervention, and then to get the most credible, if that's an appropriate word, Syrian representatives around the table, moderated probably by the UN and an equal Arab and I have to say Iranian participation, in which this can be hashed out in a civilized way. Even if there are people shouting at each other, at least they won't be blowing each other up.
Jennifer Loewenstein, Joseph Daher, thank you so much for joining us today on the Real News Network.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.